Hi guys, today I'll be presenting you the ancient river civilization of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is located, here's a map right here, it's right next to Saudi Arabia, it's between Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and then over here is Iran, and over here again is Syria. And Mesopotamia includes two rivers. There's the Euphrates River, and then there's the Tigris River. One's right here and the other one's right next to it. And those right now, they run into Iraq and Syria, and they also go up into Iran and Turkey. So Mesopotamia isn't just one civilization. It was made up of several civilizations that were created over time. And a lot of the civilizations just built on one another as they got established. And Mesopotamia is known as one of the first civilizations that came up with cities. They had a couple of civilizations that had a lot of people. I'll go into that when I get into the cities portion of our box. So right here I have the map that I showed you guys. Also on my box I have it labeled so I know what is in here. And it says Mesopotamia. I know it's backwards for you guys. And then I have this cool little sticker that says rivers are cool because Mesopotamia has two rivers. A little bit more about Mesopotamia. It is thought that when people first started going to Mesopotamia, they started as hunter-gatherers, but once they saw how rich the soil was, they began to use a lot of agriculture and grow a lot of livestock. And because they did this, farmers started to grow more crops than were needed and started to sell these crops, and this is what really started trade. And then not as many people needed to make crops because they had people that were already making so many, so they started focusing on their own trades that they could sell. And this is what really began big cities, is all this trade. So my first thing in my box is a globe with a city in it because Mesopotamia is known for creating one of the first largest cities. And then I'll tell you guys a little bit about the cities. Alright, evidence of human settlements in these cities date back to 10,000 BCE. I did see some dates a little bit earlier than that, so it's like a rough estimate around 10,000 BCE. I told you again that fertile soil created tons of agriculture, and then people started really focusing on their own trades because people that were good at farming, they did that, and then they sold what was extra and traded for things that they wanted. Other people did jobs like artists, there were blacksmiths, there were bakers, all sorts of things that really kept the city running. Three of the largest civilizations that I could find, three different civilizations that created these cities were the Uruk. They had a population of 50,000, so that's a pretty big city nowadays. There was also the Mari with 10,000 people in it, estimated, and then the Akkad with 36,000. And these ran along the Tigris and the Euphrates River, and they utilized the river, which is why they settled there, because of the river. The next thing in here that we are going to discuss is their gods and their religion. So I have a god that they could have worshipped. These civilizations, their religion was based on gods, and the city that you lived in focused on one major god, and they would look at other gods, but each city really focused on one god, and the king of that city really had the connection with those gods, and they thought that the gods were responsible for a whole bunch of different things that happened in the city. The kings would travel to other cities so they could check on the other kings, check on the gods, and they thought that all of these gods would travel through each city at least once a year. So they believed in these gods for different things and different events that happened. My next thing in my artifact box is jewelry, and I picked jewelry because I wanted it to represent women. I thought it was really cool that in Mesopotamia women had equal rights, and these equal rights meant that they could go out and work just like their husbands. A lot of women would be artists. Some women were doctors, some of them were priestesses, so a lot of women did a lot of those jobs. Even though women had equal rights, men thought that they were not as smart as them, so women were not allowed to go to school, so only boys went to school, while girls, either if they were in the lower class, girls stayed home, or they didn't stay home, they went with their mother wherever they would work. They were upper class, and the girls would stay home and learn how to be a homemaker like their mother. So I picked that because of the women's equal rights. Women could file for divorce. Women could, raise livestock. They could be farmers. They could essentially be whatever they want. There was even one civilization that had a queen instead of a king. And women were also priestesses. They were doctors. They were able to participate in their community. So I thought that was really cool. The next thing I have is a tool. This tool would be used to carve into a clay template, and this is what they used for writing. And Mesopotamia is one of the early civilizations known for creating writing. China was also one that was known for the creation of writing. But in Mesopotamia, they started using these clay palettes, and they would draw pictures of the clay palettes in boxes. And different pictures would represent different things, such as the crops. They were big on wheat, so they had a picture specifically for that. And they would draw pictures or write stories or tell myths. And eventually they went away from the box method and would draw things in order from left to right, how they would read them. And so this is a tool that they would use. They started with makeshift tools, and then eventually they actually began to make tools just for this. And these have been found, which is how we know about some of the religions and some of the gods, is all through the texts that we found that they created. And that's how a lot of our artifacts show us what is all about, or what Mesopotamia is all about, because it's in their clay templates that we see. And then my final thing in my box is a paintbrush. And I use this paintbrush to show hierarchy, because sometimes women were artists, or if you were in the lower class and you were a male, you could also be an artist. And the hierarchy in Mesopotamia was, first you had the kings. Of course you had gods before kings, but kings were chosen based on their relationship with gods. So it was thought that kings had their best relationship with God, and the more people you power, it means that you have the strongest relationship with gods. People went for kings that they felt had a strong relationship with God. So that's really how these cities grew bigger, is when kings were thought to have a stronger relationship with their God. Under the king, there was then priests and priestesses, and these were people that were really in charge of the cities, and they did their religious ceremonies, and some of these priestesses later became doctors, and the higher up jobs for women. And then below them is the upper class, and upper class was usually business owners, or they did specialized jobs. Higher up ranks in the military could be upper class. Let me see, what else could be upper class for you guys? Can't remember off the top of my head. Other upper class jobs were accountants, architects, and archaeologists, can't say it. But those were upper class jobs as well. They had some private tutors. Of course, the private tutors would only be tutoring boys, because boys were the only ones that went to school. And then it goes to the lower class. So lower class are basically who ran the city. These were the bakers, these were the farmers, these were the fishermen. These are people that you find every day here now in our own cities that really run the cities and keep them going. Even construction workers too. And then below that were slaves. And slaves were you could either buy a slave and obtain a slave, or a person could sell themselves if they wanted to. If they were in debt, they could sell themselves. A family member could sell you into slavery if they were in debt for something, or if they needed to make money. Anybody that was found during any wars, they were turned into slaves if they were from the opposite side. So they also had slaves. These slaves would either take care of the house or take care of the animals at the house. Sometimes the masters even let them, have regular jobs like being a baker or working at a shop. If the masters allowed them to have their jobs, then that's what they would do. I think that's all I have in my box right now. Of course, there's a lot more about Mesopotamia. We could go into, what they use the rivers for. We could go more in depth into their jobs and things, but these are just the basis of Mesopotamia and the 5 key points that really struck out to me that I wanted to let you guys know about. If you want to know more about these, please check out my handout. Thank you.